Okay, time for lesson 5.4, dividing with decimals. So your I can statement, I can solve division problems with decimals. All right, so let's take a look at this word problem. It says 3 friends set up a lemonade stand and they made $20.25. They will share the money equally. How much should each person get? Well, let's look at the steps that we've involved to solve this problem. The first thing we're going to do when we set this up is we're going to put the decimal point in there, but we're going to pretend like it's not there. Okay, so that's going to be step 1. Step 2, we can solve using our favorite method. And step 3, count the number of the decimal places after the decimal in the original problem, starting at the end of the quotient, and count back to the left that many places. Okay, it's kind of like multiplying decimals. We did the same thing before. We're going to apply that principle when we do division. It'll make more sense when you see it. So let's take a look at this. We're going to put 3 goes into $20.25. Okay, so I'm going to use the shortcut method. That's why you saw this pop up over here. So first thing I'm going to do is 3 won't go into 2, but it will go into 20, and that'll go in there 6 times. I'm going to subtract. That's 18. I'm going to subtract to get 2. I did my quick check step. 2 is less than 3. So I'm going to bring down my next number. Okay, and that's going to be a 2. 3 goes into 22 7 times. That's 21. When I subtract, that's 1. 1 is still less than 3. I'm going to bring down my 5. That's 15. 3 goes in there 5 times. I'm going to subtract, and I don't have a remainder now. Okay, so now my decimal point, I'm going to place it at the end. And if you look at this problem, I had 2 spaces that came after the decimal. So now I'm going to go back to the left 2 spaces. And when I move that decimal point there, the answer to my division problem, $20.25 divided by 3, is $6.75. Okay, so how about this problem? A company bought 38 sandwiches for a business meeting. Each sandwich cost the same amount. The sandwiches cost $161.12 in all. What was the price of the sandwich? Excuse me. So, step 1, ignore the decimal. Step 2, round the divisor. Step 3, you solve using your favorite method. And then you remember when you do that, you have to use the original number. We don't use the rounded number. And then we do the same thing where we put that decimal point at the end. We count how many places and we move it to the left. So here we go. Okay, so I've got 38. I'm going to round that up to 40. Okay, so about how many 4s go into 160? Okay, well, that's going to end up being 4 because 38 won't go into 16, so I was at 161. Okay, I multiply using the original number. I get 152. I subtract, that gives me 9. Bring down the next number. That's going to be 1. So how many 38 is going to get into 91? I can get 2 out of there. I subtract, I get 15. Okay, bring down the next number. And now I know I can get 4 out of there based on what I did before because I already had that right here. So when I subtract, I get 0. Put that decimal point at the end. Again, there are 2 spots that come after the decimal here. So I'm going to slip that decimal to the left 2 places. And so the cost of each sandwich was $4.24. All right. Now there are some times when you're going to need to extend the decimal places by adding a decimal point and then zeros after it. Remember, if we put that decimal point there and then put the zeros after it, it doesn't change the value. Okay. So 8 friends bought movie tickets. The total cost for the tickets was $78. How much did each friend pay? Okay. So we're going to do the same step 1 doesn't change. We're going to solve using our favorite division method here, but we're going to add a decimal point and zeros to extend the dividend as needed. Okay, continue solving the problem until finished, and then we're going to step 4 is the same as it's been all the way through. Okay, so let's take a look at this. First thing I need to look at is 8 going into 7 won't do it. I'm going to go into 78. 9 times that's 72. I'm going to subtract. I get 6. Now, this is where we put that decimal point in. So we're going to add a decimal and put a 0 in there. Think about it. If we wrote $78 as in dollar and cents notation, we would put 78.00 anyways. Those zeros at the end don't change the value. It's still 78. Okay. So now we're going to bring that down. How many 8s can I get out of 60? I can get 7 of them out of there. And that's going to be 56. I subtract, I get 4. I'm going to put another 0 after there. Okay. Bring that down. That's 40. 8 goes into 45 times. That's 40. I get no remainder. Decimal at the end. Again, I added 2 numbers after my decimal point, so I'm going to slide back to the left 2 spots. And the answer is going to be $9.75. Okay? So, we're also going to take a look at converting fractions to decimals. Remember, I've talked a lot about, we talked about fractions. This line means divided by. Okay? So, we're going to do the same thing where we're going to extend those with zeros if we need to, and we're going to continue to the end. So let's take a look at this one here. 4 goes into 1. Well, no, it doesn't really. So we're going to put a decimal point there. I'm going to add a 0. Now we've still got 1. Doesn't change the value. It's still 1. How many 4s can I get out of this 10, though? Okay, I can get 2. Subtract, that's going to be 8. I'm going to add another 0. Bring that down. How many 4s go into 20? That's going to be 5. Okay, so I subtract. I don't have a remainder here. So I'm going to put my decimal point at the end. And after I shift those 2 places over, I know that 1 divided by 4 is going to be 0 and 2,500. So if we thought about it in money, if I had $1, I split it up into 4 equal parts, it'd be 25 cents or 4 quarters. Okay, so let's do the same thing with 3/5 here. Okay, so 5 won't go into 3, so I'm going to have to put a decimal point and extend it with a 0. All right, so it goes in there 6 times, 30, subtract 0. Now this time I only have 1 number after the decimal, so I only got to move that decimal place 1 spot. 3 divided by 5 ends up being 6/10. All right, now this is what I want you to pay attention to. This is going to be something called a repeating decimal, and you'll understand when you see this. Okay? Scary, right? Yes. So you're going to do the same thing as we did before, but the one thing I want to tell you is at this point, I don't ever want you extending past 3 points after the decimal. Once we get out to the thousandths place, you can just stop. All right? So let's take a look at this. So 3 goes into 2. No, it doesn't. I'm going to put a decimal and a 0. 3 goes into 20 6 times. I subtract 18. I get a 2. I add a 0. Makes it 20 again. 3 still goes in there 6 times. I subtract. I get that 2 again. I'm going to extend it again. 0 still goes in there 6 times. 18. And this will just keep going on and on and on and on forever. That's why they call it a repeating decimal. All right. So I put my decimal point at the end. I extended 3 spots this time, so I'm going to move that 3 spots to the left. And then whenever we have a repeating decimal, we put a little symbol that looks kind of like a minus sign over the last number. Looks like this. So we have 0.666, and this line just tells people when they look at that number, that's going to go on forever. It's not going to stop. No matter how many times I divide this, I'm never going to get past this. So the answer to our question, 2 divided by 3, is 666 thousandths with a repeating symbol over the top of it. All right, so here are your practice problems for tonight. You've got 2 of them, all right? So extend the decimal point as needed. Okay, you'll see you've got a whole number here. You may need to extend this with decimal points. Here is your guiding question. Think of an example in your life when you may need to divide a decimal number by a whole number and be prepared to discuss in class. And then today I would like you to create a decimal division problem for a classmate to solve. And we'll have time to do those in groups tomorrow. And have a great night.